everyone, and welcome to the Cocktail Hour Fantasy Football Podcast presented by the Face Off Sports Network. I am your host, Emerson Beery, taking a little bit of break over this past Christmas. Work's been crazy. Everything's been a little crazy this week, so haven't been on a little bit. This has been my longest break in a while, but definitely happy to get back to it this week too. Covering some Dynasty fantasy football, risers and fallers, just going over some of the big ones from this pack week 16. Probably take a look at what they're going to do in championships. If you're checking this out, you are probably in, hopefully, a fantasy football championship or two, or you're a real degen like myself as well. So either way, thank you for coming on. Appreciate everybody checking out the live stream too. So we'll get after it this week. Raiders versus Chiefs. I always start off with the sleeper cue. Sleeper knows I'm a Chiefs fan, so that's what we're going to start off with, the Kansas City Chief game. Patrick early in the chat, though, before we get on into that, Stroud or Purdy this week? That is an extremely tough. I know Purdy's coming off a bad game, but it's really tough to lean against Purdy against a bad Commanders defense. It's just such an incredibly efficient offense. I posted that although he's the top 5 quarterback this season, Brock Purdy is also the number 26 quarterback in expected fantasy points per game. What does that tell us? It tells us that Purdy is relying on an unreal level of efficiency to get where he's at right now. It's tough to project, I think, into the future. That's why I posted an article this week a little bit concerned about his Dynasty fantasy football value. However, I'm going to roll with Purdy. I'm going to roll with Purdy this week. I just feel like it's a little bit safer option. Maybe if you needed a super high, I know I'm going with Purdy. I had to think about it in my head a little bit. Rolling with Brock Purdy over CJ Stroud this week, despite having a bad game. I think they get back after it. Hopefully the offensive line gets a little bit healthier this week, but you still have Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle out there. So Brock Purdy just by a little bit to me. And 2 weeks off, rookie quarterback, Houston. I'm still, it's a little bit risky, I think, going with Stroud. Jamie in the chat. Good to see you, Jamie. Your Browns headed to the fantasy football playoffs with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco playing like a $55 million quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, you've replaced Deshaun Watson. It's very easy. So I love that for you guys. Congratulations. Hopefully y'all keep on rolling. The underdog story in the NFL. If my Chiefs can't win it this season, then I hope I'm rooting for your Browns, Jamie. We'll start off with, like I said, the Chiefs versus the Raiders from this past week. Kansas City Chiefs, Rashee Rice had an okay game. 6 catches. He had 12 targets, but 57 yards. I posted I was a little bit concerned about Rashee Rice just because I think he's Deebo Samuel, but a much less prolific Deebo Samuel out there skill set wise. He's not a particularly adept route runner, and that's what I think will prevent him from entering that top 12, top 15, maybe even potentially top 20 Dynasty fantasy football value. I don't think he's a true wide receiver 1 in the NFL just based on his skill set. I don't think, it's still against softer zones. Not to say that Rashee Rice can't get better, but I just think that this team needs a downfield playmaker. I think Rashee Rice would fit more as the wide receiver 2 in this offense, maybe even behind Travis Kelce in the pecking order too. Maybe Travis Kelce gets a little healthier next season, gets rolling, but I would be a little bit concerned about Rashee Rice if I'm buying him at his inflated, what I believe is slightly inflated value at the moment. That's even coming from a Kansas City Chief fan. I have big hopes for him, but just be ready. I think he's probably more as a borderline wide receiver 2 than probably entering that strong wide receiver 2 territory that a lot of people have him pegged at the moment. Patrick, more start-sit questions for us here. James Cook, David Montgomery, or Walker need to. These start-sit questions are a little bit tougher when I don't have all my research in front of me. A little bit more of a dynasty one, and you're always more than welcome to hit me up on Twitter afterward or something like that when I have all my stuff in front of me here. But Walker, let's see where he's at on the injury report this week. I'm betting on Walker in a couple of my fantasy football leagues too. He's been banged up, sits out another practice yesterday. It's going to be tough. Walker, I think, has such a high ceiling, but it's going to be tough for him to get there. James Cook coming off a bad performance. We saw Leonard Fournette involved a little bit more this past week, so I'm probably going to go with James, Cook, and Walker if they're healthy. Jahmyr Gibbs seems to be really taking over that backfield. David Montgomery. Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs is the real deal. So I think I'm going to go with James Cook, Walker, if healthy, but definitely keep an eye on the practice reports. If he continues to sit out, they might end up sitting him this week too. I'm going to do another game before we do more start-sit questions, Patrick, so I'll be right back at you, though. On to our next game here. That was the Patriots versus the Broncos. Broncos now, I guess not so surprisingly, sitting Russell Wilson the rest of the season. Don't want to get him more guaranteed money on that contract. What more than likely is the Broncos are going to make him a post-June 1st cut, and then he is going to probably count as the heaviest cap hit in the NFL next season. Probably a top 10 cap hit the season after that. It's really a disaster for the Broncos. One of the worst trades in NFL history. But Russell Wilson, now the betting favorite to land with the Minnesota Vikings, I think that's a pretty good. I don't see how that's an improvement over Kirk Cousins. I don't know why you wouldn't just stick with the guy that you know unless Kirk Cousins wants to move on. But Russell Wilson, potentially the Raiders would be an interesting spot next season. The Falcons, I think, would take Russell Wilson with open arms. There's places Russell Wilson can land. We saw this year. He gets a lot of flack, but Russell Wilson is a starting quarterback in today's NFL. It's just he's not a prolific fantasy quarterback. He's not super relevant in one quarterback formats, I think. But Russell Wilson still floating in that mid quarterback 2 territory. I still think Russell has some juice left, and he can be a valuable super flex starter. He's not going to get paid as much next year. Hopefully that means a little bit more pieces around him too. So don't give up on Russell Wilson. I think he could be a sneaky buy as a low, somebody you're sending a second round pick out, I think that gets taken in a lot of leagues, even in a super flex format. I think if you send an early mid-second round, maybe I wouldn't send an early one, but I think you can get Russell Wilson for pick 15 to 18, and that's something I'd be willing to do considering he probably has a couple more years left he's going to give us. And the Broncos are going to be paying him quite a bit of money to not play, so we'll see what happens. But I still like Russell Wilson as a sneaky dynasty asset at the moment, somebody who you could probably get decent quarterback 2 production next year for fairly cheap. Patrick dropping a start-sit question for us. Receivers, Flowers, Jaden Reed, Jordan Addison, or Noah Brown. Addison, this is another one. I need to look at where the injury reports are for this week because I know Jordan Addison's been missing a little bit of time lately. Jordan Addison had that big week. There is no TJ Hawkinson in the offense at the moment. Jaren Hall, though, is getting the start. That makes you a little bit nervous. He was a limited participant in practice yesterday. I really have a hard time with Jaren Hall this week, so I don't know if I'm going to go that direction. Jaden Reed's been playing very well this entire season. I think he has a bright future. I'm probably going to go Jaden Reed and Zay Flowers here. Like I said, definitely maybe double check with me this week when I get everything in front of me, but I don't want to start Jaren Hall. I don't want to play Noah Brown first game back, even without Tank Dell. Was CJ Stroud's first game back. But yeah, those are going to be my 2, but definitely maybe check with me a little bit later on in the week. I have Cook at 10, Walker 15, and Monty as RB 25. That's about how I would have it too. Bills, Rams, or Jaguars defense. Yeah, this is another one that you maybe want to get with me a little bit later on. I don't even rank my defenses, but if I was just, going off the fly here, Bills, like I said, maybe give me the defensive question a little bit later on. I'd have to do a little bit of research for that one. I don't want to give you just an off the top answer of my head here. You could just do that yourself. So I'll do a little bit of defensive research this week. I do a lot of defensive research when I do it, but in the dog days of the fantasy playoffs, I actually don't have a team left in the championships that use a defense. I'm in 10 fantasy football championships this weekend, not playing a defense in any of them. So I've kind of dropped off in that area. So, but check back with me a little bit later on. Oh, Jamie's got you right here. Bills top 3, Jags top 5, and Rams top 10. There you go, my man. Jamie does podcasts himself. He's our most dedicated listener, very smart guy. So definitely I would trust his opinion, even maybe more so than myself, especially on the defensive side there. Up next, Saints versus the Rams. Alvin Kamara looking, had a down forms, but I think Alvin Kamara is looking like an old self. The big question, I think, is where do we rank with Puka Nacua looking like the real deal? Puka Nacua is a firm top 15 wide receiver in Dynasty. It's just how high do we want to rank him? Is it top 12? Is it top 10? I think at this point, you can't say Puka isn't the real deal. You can't just say it's target. This is the targets or it's the offense. He's going to be a very, very, very a great wide receiver in the NFL. Puka Nacua itching into my top 10. I have him at number 11 at the moment, but it's going to be hard to keep him out of the top 10 this offseason. But the big question is, where do you rank Kyren Williams in Dynasty? This is I feel like if this was a couple of years ago, Kyren Williams would be up in the top 10 Dynasty running backs pretty easily. But then you look at the surrounding landscape. You can't rank him that low. You get past running back 15. Once you get past the top 12 running backs, you're starting to get into guys like Isaiah Pacheco, Austin Eckler, despite his advanced age and downplay. So it's really hard to rank Kyren Williams outside the top 15 Dynasty running backs. What does that mean, though? He's probably more worth like the wide receiver 30 to 35 in Dynasty leagues. It's just such a volatile position. You could see Kyren Williams, he's the RB2, I believe, right now. No, RB8. I think it might be the RB2. I thought I heard somebody say he was the RB2 this week. Must be in fantasy points per game, which that wouldn't surprise me. I'll double check that stat. But it's been an incredible run this year. And that's probably definitely what it is. He had that long stretch he missed, but I would be hesitant. And I don't think a lot of managers are anymore, but you want to be very careful if you were trying to acquire Kyren Williams at this price. This is a situation you could see that work just disappear just like that. This is what consistently happens with running backs. Not an elite athlete. You could see them bringing somebody in. Teams always, we're always like, well, they wouldn't dedicate draft capital to that position. They already have Kyren Williams there. Teams always do stuff like that. You're going to see the Rams bring in somebody to complement Kyren Williams, or maybe even take over for Kyren Williams this offseason. But I would still, if people are just trying to get out from running backs in January, it just depends on your league. Some leagues, January is the time to sell every single running back you have. If that's the case, would I acquire Kyren Williams for a mid-second round pick? Sure. But anything more than that, I would be fairly careful with in my top 15 Dynasty running backs. But that is more, I think it says more about the state of the position as opposed to the talent of Kyren Williams going forward. Jamie on Puka, I look at Puka kind of like Higgins in the past. He was a top 10, 12, and keeps falling because you can't really move him up and starting that high. Yeah, I prefer, I don't even think it's close for me. Like Puka is much more. I prefer Puka the player much more to T Higgins. I've always been a little bit down on T Higgins. I think he's riding a 2021 stretch with Jamar Chase that he had. That he finishes a top 5 fantasy receiver a few times in the final 6 weeks. But past that, you're looking at a guy who's really more floated as a low end or wide receiver 2 in fantasy points per game. Does not play through. Attempts to play through injuries, usually does not. That might, he's a tough guy. I'm not saying that, but it's usually we always left wanting with T Higgins, and it'll depend on where he lands this season. Of course, if he lands somewhere like the Bills, if they lose Stefon Diggs, if he lands with the Kansas City Chiefs, you could be looking at a very strong stretch of production. But past significant landing spots like that, it's not somebody he's more of a wide receiver 20, in my opinion, to a little bit lower as opposed to an elite Dynasty wide receiver approaching top 12 like he was this past offseason. But I posted a lot on T Higgins in the past. I really liked him as a rookie, but then I thought the value got a little overinflated when he got into the top 12 territory. Bills versus the Chargers. What is wrong with Stefon Diggs? Stefon Diggs is getting up there. He's going to be 31 next year, but he's an old, for being even 31, Stefon Diggs is an old 31. This guy's been playing significant amount of snaps for 9 years straight. He came into the NFL in 2015, and when he was healthy, he had some stretches early on in his career. He wasn't 100% healthy, but when he was out there on the field, he's always been taking a lot of snaps. Heavy workload with the Buffalo Bills this past year. I think he's a little bit older even than that 31 says he is. I think we just saw this past season, though. We saw Mike Evans have a great year. Devontae Adams would have had a big year if it was any other quarterback back there other than Jimmy G and Hayden O'Connell. Keenan Allen, although, maybe the injury was, you could have said that was going to come because of the age, but Keenan Allen having a big year too. If people are just going to throw Stefon Diggs away for a second-round pick this offseason, because no one's going to spend a first-round pick on Stefon Diggs anymore, likely, coming off 31. But if you can get Stefon Diggs for kind of the discount you were getting Keenan Allen with this offseason, if you can get Stefon Diggs with the discount you were getting Mike Evans this offseason, maybe it's a little bit more pricey with Stefon Diggs, but I think it'd be worth it. You send an early second-round pick. These, people always discount, or they put too much emphasis on the future in Dynasty. Next year is the most important year for Dynasty, you know what I mean? And then the following year after that, just value in one season. Like we value running backs in just single season, but basically what they're going to do for us next season in Dynasty pretty much now. And, Stefon Diggs, I think, has a couple strong years left in him. He's still getting the targets, but it's just this offense has changed in what it once was. It's not just a deep shot offense anymore. The passing volume is low right now in Buffalo. And even though he has a high target share, it's just not materializing that much. So I think you could see Stefon Diggs going at a value. I think you could see, if you're in Dynasty rookie drafts coming up, especially somebody who maybe isn't 100% sold on the fact that they're going to compete for a championship this year, I think he could probably be had for a second-round pick here, especially if he has one more bad performance here, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully everything turns around for the Chargers next year too, because once again, they suffered just injuries to the Chargers. What's new? I feel like it's been a decade straight of that. Colts versus the Falcons. I mean, what could we do without our daily or our weekly Arthur Smith update? It just goes back and forth every single week. We got a Kyle Pitts touchdown this week. Drake London now turning in dud performance after dud performance. Bijan Robinson getting a little bit more work, but it's just tough. I really hope. I hope that the Falcons see past just the few immediate wins against bad teams and realize that Arthur Smith is not the coach of the future. It's hard to win with this kind of style of football. I think if you're just going to play it safe, you have Taylor Heineke, who's shown he's willing to throw it downfield in the past. If you're just going to play it safe, you're not focused on getting your ball to the best players, how many games is this going to win you against top competition? Hopefully we see a change at Arthur Smith. I do think the Bucs are the best team in the division. I think they're set to win it here, but Arthur Smith could get one more year in Atlanta. If that's the case, like I've said, the next year is the most important year in Dynasty. Is Bijan Robinson the RB1 at that point? I think he would be, but if Arthur Smith is the coach, I think it's very close between him and Jahmyr Gibbs as the Dynasty RB, between Dynasty RB1 and Dynasty RB2. It's just been getting thinner and thinner. It's hard to trust Arthur Smith next year. So if that was the case, it'd be very close between the two. And I could understand especially if you were trying to compete for a championship next year, you not wanting to give up Jahmyr Gibbs for Bijan Robinson. But the talent alone, just what we've seen this year, he's one of the most talented running backs to enter the league since, probably the most talented running back to enter the league since Saquon Barkley. Breece Hall's up there too. Ezekiel Elliott, some of the best top running backs in the past decade. He's right there with him. So still have Bijan Robinson as my RB1 in Dynasty leagues. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Both of these guys are so talented. It's just, trust me when I say it is Arthur Smith more than it's these guys. I think any kind of change in the offense would be hugely beneficial to these players. Kyle Pitts getting, as an afterthought, it's just the whole year, Kyle Pitts has been running routes like a wide receiver. They don't give him plays against linebackers. They don't make it easy on Kyle Pitts. Everything is an advanced route. And it's tough. If you're a tight end, you don't have the kind of quick agility. Even if you're a lead athlete like Kyle Pitts, you're not the same athlete as these wide receivers are. And to not get him in positions to succeed where he can take advantage, I think has been, it's ridiculous. And to spend 3 top 10 picks and not use them effectively, I think is malpractice. And I don't understand why Arthur Smith is going to have a job after this year, but it does look like he could get one more year. So Drake London, Kyle Pitts, it's hard to rank Drake London as a more than just a kind of top 24 wide receiver. And it's hard to rank Kyle Pitts as in the top 7 or 8 tight ends, just considering what they're going to give you probably next year. And then we're already a few years into their careers where they haven't really met expectations. So it's tough. It could be chance where, I mean, especially Drake London, you might just want to sell on his name value, especially if you're competing for a championship next season with if Arthur Smith's at the helm. Maybe see what you can get. Maybe see what if you can get somebody like a Zay Flowers who could potentially have a better season next season, somebody in that kind of similar range. See if you can exchange him for a low-end wide receiver too, who has, yes, maybe even like a T. Higgins type, depending on where he lands. Somewhere like a low-end wide receiver too, who has just a little bit more of a consistent target share next season. Over to the Packers versus the Panthers. Jordan Love. It's been an up and down season for him. I just don't think I think you'll always be left one. I think Jordan Love kind of falls into that Baker Mayfield kind of territory. It's a little bit sporadic. Jordan Love doesn't have a very good, he's not particularly very accurate, but he does have a big arm. He is a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. You might always be left wanting. It's kind of like what you feel watching Geno Smith, the Baker Mayfields out there. You're always going to be left wanting with Jordan Love, but I mean, he's always going to be, there's always going to be a place for Jordan Love at the NFL at this point. He's that good. Jordan Love's mid quarterback 2 in my Dynasty ranking. Still a little bit worried about the long term, but I still think he's set up to have potentially top 18 season in 2024, potentially top 15. So somebody you're certainly keeping an eye on, particularly in Superflex formats. We've talked a lot about Jayden Reed. Hopefully he can make it back this next week. I think he's the wide receiver to own, even over Christian Watson. Prolific with the ball in his hands. You can scheme him up with rush attempts. You can get him the ball in the short field. Great red zone target this season as well. Jayden Reed would fall somewhere in my top 30 Dynasty wide receivers. I'm ready to revamp my rankings here this week. It's been Christmas, so I haven't actually touched him in about a week and a half. But Jayden Reed, I believe, going to fall somewhere in my top 30 rankings. Would I spend a first-round pick to get Jayden Reed? No. I think I don't like to spend significant capital on wide receivers in Dynasty fantasy football leagues when they're at more of an inflated price. I think you're better served maybe holding on for that late round quarterback potentially that falls in that area, running back. But Jayden Reed, certainly somebody I'm going to be eyeing in Dynasty drafts this offseason. I've been in about 30 leagues, haven't done. Jamie, you just said Jordan Love. Jordan Love is better than Mahomes. LOL. Yeah, don't get that out of here, Jamie. Okay. I don't want to talk about Patrick Mahomes right now. It's a little bit sad, but I do think the wide receivers, Matt Nagy deserves to be working at Costco, not coaching as an offensive coordinator in the NFL. The scheme isn't right. Players aren't lined up where they're supposed to be. Wide receivers aren't running the right routes. And that's turned Patrick Mahomes into a shell of himself. He can't trust what he's seeing out there. Even open receivers, he's just not clicking. He's not ready for it. He's not even ready. He's so lost. He's lost so many times this season. Even when the play materializes like it's supposed to, he's not even looking for it anymore, it seems like. So it's a lost year for my Kansas City Chiefs. I'm ready to already call it. I'm ready to call it a year. I'm ready to get into the offseason and fix our tackles, fix our wide receivers, and hopefully we get a little better. I want Egbuka to be drafted on the Chiefs to pair with Rashee Rice. There's a lot of this wide receiver class is deep, Jamie. So I think we are going to see a wide receiver, hopefully in that first round, but we've had bad luck with second round wide receivers these past few years. So hopefully we're going to be seeing a first round wide receiver pick for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I'm a little behind, but heard you mention Pitts. I see a big week from him versus a bad tight Tennessee defense, and also plays 45% in the slot, and they're horrible against slot receivers. Hope you're right. I hope you are right. It's been a rough year for Kyle Pitts, but I still believe in the talent. Like I was telling, like you're probably listening to now, Jamie, Kyle Pitts, that athlete. You're telling me Kyle Pitts for Patrick Mahomes is a top 5 fantasy tight end, a top 3, maybe even the number 1 fantasy tight end. He's asked to play the position harder than anybody else does in the NFL. And so to act like he's not very talented, to act like this guy's like a bum or whatever, like some people are just done with him. It's crazy to me. And, you can say the situation. Like I said, we need to value what's going to happen next year. If Arthur Smith is the coach next year, Kyle Pitts is in for another bad season. And you can probably get him at a lower value So it wouldn't be a bad idea if Arthur Smith's the coach next year to sell Kyle Pitts, but I'm going to be buying him back the next year because I believe in the talent. If he becomes a free agent, if he gets traded, Kyle Pitts is going to be. If I was Kyle Pitts, I would demand a trade. I would sit down, tell them I'm not playing anymore because I think he needs to resurrect his career because he would be a top 3 fantasy tight end on 25 teams in the NFL, I think. So this is just outrageous. That's I rant about Kyle Pitts every week if you've listened to this podcast. So I appreciate y'all bearing with me through these trying and turbulent times for me. It's I write almost every week. I feel like I write an article and I complain about Arthur Smith on this podcast. One of the more repugnant human beings right now in my life, but I hope he's the offensive coordinator. I wish good things to his family, but not for the Atlanta Falcons next season. Over to the Ravens versus the 49ers. Lamar Jackson getting it done. Not the prolific passing stats, probably going to be the MVP. Where do you want to go here? Zay Flowers finally has a big week. Isaiah likely staying productive. Zay Flowers, like I said, I would consider trading Drake London for Zay Flowers straight up right now. Zay Flowers is going to be the wide receiver 1 going forward, I believe, for the Baltimore Ravens. Where does he fall in dynasty rankings? I think he's right on that top 15 line. I think he's set up for success. Lamar Jackson running at a career low clip this season, a little over 50 yards rushing per game. That's down from 90 yards rushing per game when he was the MVP. That's a stat that's decreased for 4 years in a row now. As this Greg Roman offense starts to develop a little bit more, we're seeing more pass attempts. Zay Flowers is getting most of the targets. Yeah, I think but him and Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a tough conversation. I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba is playing in a tough spot, playing behind DK Metcalf, not playing with the same caliber of quarterback that Zay Flowers is. Do I prefer Jaxon Smith-Njigba, the player? I do. But is Jaxon Smith-Njigba going to have a better year than Zay Flowers in 2024? Probably not. And the value is close enough going future. I probably am going to move Zay Flowers actually, probably just ahead, probably just one spot ahead of Jaxon Smith-Njigba in rookie rankings. He's going to be my rookie wide receiver 2, ahead of Rashee Rice, but behind Puka Nacua, because Puka Nacua just 150 yards short of breaking Jamar Chase's rookie receiving record. Oh, sorry, guys, my phone is going off. But really like what Zay Flowers was doing this year. I was the first one. I had Zay Flowers as my rookie wide receiver 2. I was really excited about Zay Flowers, and I pulled off of it with the landing spot with Lamar Jackson. I was a little bit worried, but luckily the attention has almost solely been focused on Zay Flowers, particularly with Mark Andrews out. So I think my hesitation is gone. I'm ready to buy in on the Ravens the rest of the way. Eagles versus the Giants, a little bit closer for the Eagles than you wanted. It just seems like it's not quite hitting the same spot. It's not quite hitting like it was last year. The Eagles are. They're a little bit off. Maybe it's Nixon. Maybe it's their offensive coordinator leaving, potentially. Jalen Hurts just not quite as on point. We saw last season them have better fantasy performances, and they weren't even playing really in the fourth quarter. They were just playing conservative football, not really stepping on the gas in the fourth quarter. And this year, they're in more competitive games. That's what we wanted. That's what we were hoping for. And that's what made us buy in even more to the Eagles, but it just hasn't been the case. Jalen Hurts, though, that top 3 discussion, Jalen Hurts is still my dynasty quarterback too. He's right behind Josh Allen for me. And I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. He's still number 3, but for fantasy purposes, I want to buy in on the rushing upside the next couple of seasons with these 2 guys. Jalen Hurts, although I think he's fallen behind Josh Allen, I still think Jalen Hurts, we're looking at a guy who's tied through with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith through at least next season, probably even the season after that with them as well. The running scheme, the tush-push, everything going into Jalen Hurts. I think we'll look back and think that this was maybe even a slightly down year for Jalen Hurts compared to what he's going to do next year and the year after. Definitely still worth 2. I still have him ahead of CJ Stroud. It's definitely still worth a few first round picks in super flex leagues. Don't sell too low on your Eagles, because I still think AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, they're all going to hit home. I still think in 2024. Dallas Goedert. I mean, we're looking at the season. Devontae Smith is exceeding my expectations. I was worried. I didn't think AJ Brown and Devontae Smith could both finish as top 12 wide receivers. I mean, I guess technically I was right, but Devontae Smith is the wide receiver 13. I think I had him as the wide receiver 15 or 16. And you just look out, and Jalen Hurts is the quarterback 2. I mean, everything right where we expected it to be. Maybe Jalen Hurts, we valued him as the quarterback 1. We expected maybe that more Josh Allen, what's happening with him right now, but everybody's right where they're supposed to be. AJ Brown having a terrific season. So it's not time to panic at all on the Eagles. We see teams fluctuate in play just a little bit. And if this is as bad as it gets for the Eagles, then I'm still fully on that train. AJ Brown, my dynasty wide receiver 4, behind the new big 3. CeeDee Lamb entering that top 3 dynasty fantasy football tier. Oh, that's a perfect lead in. My next game is the Cowboys versus the Dolphins. That's a perfect lead in. CeeDee Lamb, top 3 dynasty wide receiver, and has an argument to be the dynasty wide receiver 1. Has an argument to be the wide receiver 1 in 2024 redraft leagues. Jamar Chase, it just hasn't hit quite yet. Jamar Chase, that prolific, that 2,000-yard season that we've seen for Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson these last 2 years. We keep expecting that from Jamar Chase, and just hasn't quite hit the same. Struggled with the injuries a little bit. Joe Burrow now getting hurt, so it just hasn't worked. It hasn't worked out for injury reasons, but still a little bit worried. We saw the Bengals offense not fully functional this year, so a little bit worried about Jamar Chase. Not big concerns. Not big concerns. Has an argument in himself to be the wide receiver 1, but it's closer now than it has ever been. Justin Jefferson, potentially no Kirk Cousins next year. Who is going to be the quarterback? It's really going to depend. If it's Russell Wilson, do we still have, or even somebody worse than Russell Wilson? Do we still have Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 1? With these guys being so close, with potentially CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase, having better seasons potentially next year. The spot is not quite as firm as it used to be. And it's not because he's not a great player. It's just because we see how a bad offensive situation can drag all these players down with them. So CeeDee Lamb, I would have him. Is it a first round difference between CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase anymore? No. I think, before the season, I think anybody would have sent CeeDee Lamb in a first round pick for Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I don't think that's the case anymore. So if you've had CeeDee Lamb, hold on for dear life, because I think Dak Prescott probably going to get a contract extension. It looks like the last recent days have indicated. So I think you're going to see multiple potential wide receiver 1 seasons, or at least close to, from CeeDee Lamb coming up. I think 2,000 yards, 1,800 yards is absolutely within his range of outcomes as well. So very, very excited about what CeeDee Lamb's going to be doing the next couple of seasons. Goodness, I have an iPhone 15, and apparently I don't know how to turn off the ringer. This thing's ridiculous. I have the volume on low. They took away my little click button I had to turn off the ringer. So I don't know. Technology is supposed to be easier. This phone's hardly different from my last one, and I can't turn off the ringer now, so I kind of regret it. Up next, Cardinals versus the Bears. Where do we go here? Kyler Murray, if you're the Cardinals and you have a really early pick, are you going to keep Kyler Murray still? It's really tough. I think Kyler Murray potentially looking like he might stay and then try to get a haul for that early pick. We'll find out. But Justin Fields, I think, certainly going to be a quarterback in the NFL, starting quarterback in the NFL in 2024. Raiders are getting a lot of steam. I think the Falcons would be a great place for Justin Fields. I would hate it for Kyle Pitts, and I would hate it for I would absolutely hate it for Kyle Pitts. And Drake London, once again, I think that, especially if Arthur Smith is the coach of Justin Fields, I think we'd be seeing it right back to where we were. Marvin Harrison Jr. is my top fantasy player behind Roschon. Then it goes Chase Jefferson. Jamie, at least, yeah, you're not picking a sleeper this time, Jamie, with Marvin Harrison, but I think Marvin Harrison will enter right into that top 5, 6, 7 dynasty wide receivers. I wouldn't be afraid to take him in the second or third round of a dynasty rookie draft, even in Superflex. I think it's really it's paid off. You know, when I've gone full send, I really bought into CeeDee Lamb, the talent. He's been great. I was willing to take him in the top 36 picks in dynasty leagues, and he's panned out. I felt the same way about Jamar Chase, and now I feel the same way about Marvin Harrison Jr. I think just very rock solid safe. If the landing spot was absolutely horrible, you might have, but with Kyler Murray, yeah, I think he's a top 5 dynasty wide receiver already. And it might start off a little bit slow, but especially if you're starting off with a 1-year rebuild or just trying to compete as a young team, I think that's a great pick in dynasty leagues. But Justin Fields, still a borderline top 12 quarterback. I'd have him right behind Purdy. The upside is certainly there, but if he goes to the Raiders, do we see the Raiders really changing anything for him? The Raiders would once again, I think this could be a team where Justin Fields would beat up on the bad teams he plays, which he does. And then as a passer against good teams, he's really going to struggle again. And that's why we see the kind of just the crazy roller coaster outcomes from Justin Fields, is because against the bad defenses, he can get rolling, get a few passes in there, then hit him with the run game. But against good defenses, he struggles. This decision making is the processing is very slow. I don't believe Justin Fields is a great quarterback. I think Justin Fields is his rushing. For instance, I don't see Justin Fields as a starting quarterback 5, 7 years down the line here, but for the near-term production, I still think he fits with that quarterback 1 territory. If he landed with the Falcons, I'd be very excited about his fantasy value. He doesn't, whether Kyle Pitts and Drake London hit home every week, that doesn't matter. Justin Fields, somebody's going to get home for him. Bijan Robinson taking short passes to the house. That would be an ideal landing spot for Justin Fields. Would probably go back into my top 10. But yeah, it's very volatile. If he went to the Raiders, I'd be pretty nervous about his future value. Jacksonville versus Tampa Bay. Rachaad White continues to get it done. Rachaad White's a top 10 dynasty running back. Once again, not somebody, I love that I bought low, but I'm probably not buying high on Rachaad White either. Although I will say this, I asked on Twitter the other day, would you rather have Rachaad White or a late 2023 first-round pick? Most people told me or late 2024 first-round pick. Most people told me they wanted a late 2024 first-round pick, and I disagree. The class is thin this year. There are some great – the wide receivers are deep. If you want a wide receiver, you can probably get a pretty damn good wide receiver in the second round or early second round of a draft, but the running back position is going to be very weak. Trayvon Henderson, I believe. I need to start doing my research, but I believe Trayvon Henderson's going to go back to Ohio State. My Kansas guy, Neil, not entering the draft deal. I thought he was going to be a potential sleeper. So it's going to be tough. And I think the quarterback position, there's going to be 3 or 4 guys that you want in that first round, but I don't know if there's going to be 6 or 7 first round quarterbacks like some people have predicted. It could be more like 4 or 5. And so that's going to push Rachaad White. I still think that's a value. So if somebody said, would you rather have Rachaad White or a late 2024 first round pick? I'd do it. And that's maybe a trade I would consider sending, especially it's almost shifting to running backs being buys in January because you zig when others zag. Before, people valued running backs too much in the early offseason with positions being so volatile, with somebody's season could get blown up by a signing or a draft, and that doesn't usually happen at the other positions quite as much. So with the new kind of ways, like everybody's like, sell all your running backs, the trade market for them is super low. So could you get Rachaad White for a late first round pick? Probably not early second anymore, but if you're you were in the championship, you have a bottom 3 pick, I think you could get Rachaad White at the moment still, despite him having a great season. Definitely going to be the running back for Tampa Bay in the future, and Baker Mayfield, check down king, baby, having a great season, but he loves checking down to those running backs, and I think that's a match made in heaven for Rachaad White. Seattle versus the Titans. Tyler Lockett leads the team in fantasy points. DK Metcalf had a good day. Jaxon Smith-Njigba 7 targets. I think next year the cap hit on Tyler Lockett is pretty high. If he does come back, which is not guaranteed, I think he's gonna have to restructure. Which that makes I think we're gonna start slowly seeing. I could see Tyler Lockett off the team next year. I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba could be a nice dynasty buy low at the moment, and DK Metcalf too. Both DK Metcalf, Jaxon Smith-Njigba buy lows in dynasty at the moment. Even if it's Geno Smith back next year. These guys complement each other perfectly. Jaxon Smith-Njigba works a little bit more underneath, route technician. DK Metcalf, God, can't talk today. That prolific downfield threat, elite athlete. DK Metcalf was one of the most unlucky wide receivers in the NFL this year. The catchable target rate was outside, I believe, the top 90 players when I looked last week. Missed on a lot of deep targets. The touchdown, he wasn't targeted enough in the red zone. I thought he played like a top 10 fantasy receiver this season. That's where I had him. I had him as the wide receiver 10 coming into the year. I thought he played that well, but the offense just didn't come together around him. The offensive line was bad, limited Geno Smith's plays downfield. And Jaxon Smith-Njigba, it was always going to be tough for him to get home with playing with these great wide receivers. But you look up, 602 yards, not great, not terrible though. The line I really think is that kind of that 400-yard mark. Is if they're in real danger if they don't clear that 400-yard mark as a rookie. It's kind of an arbitrary number, but it's kind of where the cutoff. Where if you have below that, you're in super. It's looking really bad for you for the future. But got above that, I think he's going to get a lot more targets. I think he's going to, even if Tyler Lockett comes back, you're going to see Jaxon Smith-Njigba take over that wide receiver 2 role at least. So if somebody's discounting him, would I rather have Jaxon Smith-Njigba or Drake London? I think it's a very tough conversation. I think it may depend on who the Falcons hire as the coach, but I think he's right in that territory, right as a top 15 to 17 dynasty wide receiver. He's still my I put him right behind. I said earlier in the show, I'd put him right behind Zay Flowers too. So he's my wide receiver 3, not the wide receiver 1 that we anticipated, but still a very good season. And I still expect Jaxon Smith-Njigba to be a good wide receiver in the future. Maybe just doesn't have that elite top 10 wide receiver skill set that we anticipated maybe though. Raiders defense over Nick, I'll be honest, like I was telling somebody on the show, I have all my teams are done with defenses in them. I really haven't done any research for the defenses. I would only be looking at the matchup and telling you what off the top of my head, to be honest with you. So hit me up with the defense. I was telling the guy earlier in the show, I'm going to do some defensive research for you guys. Hit me up at Dynasty_analyst on Twitter, and I'll definitely get back to you tonight or early tomorrow morning, and I'll do some projections and everything like that on the defense. So thanks for bearing with me. Oh, it's Jamie coming in the clutch. See, Jamie, it's like he's my co-host. He's like the co-host in the chat. Rams top 10, Packers top 15, Raiders top 25. Thank you, Jamie. And like I said, I trust Jamie's opinion more than myself on the defense. He has a podcast himself. It's a great show. Jamie, feel free to drop that in the comments too. Definitely worth checking him out. What's your Twitter handle, Jamie? I'm going to tell people to give you a follow too. I think it's just Jamie, right? No. Jamie, let's look you up. Jamie Perog, yeah. Jamie, Perog. Give him a follow on Twitter. Very, very smart guy himself. Up next, after the Seahawks versus the Titans, we'll start wrapping it up here. Commanders versus Jets, Breece Hall. Right in that RB1 conversation still. I know we didn't get we didn't get top 5. Fantasy managers should have gotten 2 top 5 fantasy seasons from Breece Hall already. He should have them 2 in a row to start his career. Breece Hall should honestly be maybe the dynasty RB1. If things went right, if we got Aaron Rodgers this season, if Breece Hall did not tear his ACL week 6 or 7 last season, I think he's the dynasty RB1. He would have finished as a top 5 running back, probably top 3 running back, 2 years in a row. Aaron Rodgers, we saw what he did with Aaron Jones for years. It's unfortunate that we kind of got robbed. We got a little bit robbed of. He's the RB3. He's really jumped up this past week. I was just saying, I can't believe it. He's with these two exploding performances. He's a top 5 running back this year. We got it. We got it, everybody. It didn't come. It came in bunches. We didn't get the consistent season that we wanted. I guess I'll say that now. We didn't get the consistent season we wanted, but he's right in that conversation. I think him and Jahmyr Gibbs. I said Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson earlier. Breece Hall's right in that mix. I think it's a 3-headed monster at the running back position at the moment. Breece Hall coming hopefully back with Aaron Rodgers. We saw what Aaron Rodgers did with Aaron Jones. Breece Hall's going to get a lot of target volume. Aaron Rodgers isn't a big downfield thrower anymore. I think Breece Hall right in that mix. You put these 3 guys ahead of Christian McCaffrey because of age. Christian McCaffrey maybe even has an RB4 argument despite his being ancient for the running back position. But yeah, I would spend first round plus on Breece Hall. Now, no running back. I'm not sure any running back anymore. I love Bijan Robinson so much. I'd probably do it for Bijan, but I'm not sure any running back's worth 2 first-round picks anymore. Maybe unless they're both late. But Breece Hall, first-round pick plus. But I said a first-round pick and a player like Jaden Reed. Maybe that's a nice trade to explore. First-round pick, somebody like Jaden Reed, somebody in that wide receiver 25 to 30 range potentially. See if that gets it done for Breece Hall because I think he's going to have a very big year in 2024, right in that particularly right in that RB1 conversation in 2024 leagues. Start to ETN, Bijan on Kamara. Are we going to trust ETN again? It's been abysmal. ETN's been abysmal recently. It's been really tough. The yards per carry have been below 4 now for, I feel like, double-digit weeks approaching here. Yeah, I'm probably sitting ETN this week. If those are my options. Kamara makes me a little bit nervous too. I don't know fully what to expect. He's not quite the prolific pass catcher he used to be, more of a volume guy now, but I think at least he's going to get that volume. Especially with Trevor Lawrence potentially. We don't know what's going to happen with him yet. I'm going to roll with Bijan and Kamara. All right. And prime time. Jamie has an opinion too. All top 12 options this week. I might ETN. He's probably he's right on that top 12, 15 for me, but it's pretty risky with ETN at the moment, I think. All right. We just got a couple more left here. Seahawks, Commanders, Lions, Vikings, Amon-Ra St. Brown's the truth. We talked about Jahmyr Gibbs a lot already. Amon-Ra St. Brown, truth. Top 5, top 6 dynasty wide receiver. I go back and forth between him and Garrett Wilson. Sam Laporta coming back down a little bit, but still, I still believe the dynasty tight end 1, particularly with the season-ending injuries to T.J. Hockenson and Mark Andrews. T.J. Hockenson not likely to be 100% to start next season. I think that paves the way for Sam Laporta to be the tight end 1. I think those older players were the most in competition, but Mark Andrews struggled to stay healthy these last couple seasons. Seems to be held back from that kind of Kelsey ceiling too. I think Laporta does have that kind of elite ceiling. So Laporta firmly that dynasty tight end 1 at the moment too, solidifying that. Browns versus Texans, Jamie. It was a great week. Amari Cooper, Joe Flacco. We talked about it a little bit, but Joe Flacco is my savior in my dynasty leagues. I play in all Superflex formats. Every single team I have pretty much has lost the one of my quarterbacks. So I picked up Joe Flacco everywhere, and I'm riding the lightning. I'm riding the lightning. I started him in most. I sat him one time, and I regret it yesterday. I really do. But I've started him in like 5 or 6 of my 10 championships last night, and just getting it done. This is the final hoorah. Joe Flacco has literally no value past this. If you were out of it and you have an open trade deadline, trade Joe Flacco for anything because he's not going to be playing next year. But what a hell of a ride for Joe Flacco, showing what this team really can do with competent quarterback play next season. What I'll drop is this. It's not a popular take. Deshaun Watson, still a buy. Deshaun Watson, everybody hates him. So he does have no name cachet. People love to bag on him. So he's going to be probably outside people's top 16, 15 quarterbacks. And I think that's a little crazy. Guy played hurt for most of the year, 2-year layoff. We saw teams struggle. We saw a lot of quarterbacks struggle this season. Deshaun Watson, the games he played a whole way through, he was a top 10 quarterback in terms of fantasy points per game. And I think that's what we can expect next season. I think he's going to be a low-end quarterback one. The arm strength got a little exposed this year. You look back, he never had a very strong arm. On Player Profiler, one of the websites I work for, a great website for research, he was a bottom like 10th percentile for arm talent, or arm strength, I should say. So we've seen, Deshaun Watson's never going to get back to top 5 quarterbacks, but I think top 10, 12 territory, I think he's a good buy this offseason. I think you can get Deshaun Watson for a second-round pick, maybe a very late first-round pick, and I think that'd be worth it. He's locked into Cleveland no matter what happens. He would count $200 million in dead cap next season. He'd have the highest cap. They would spend over $100 million per year to keep him off the field if they decided to get rid of him this offseason. So that's not going to happen. For the next 2 years, they do that. So it's not going to happen. Deshaun Watson's going to be the quarterback. And I think he's a decent buy at the moment. And like Jamie said, Cedric Tillman is probably a good buy at the moment too. Amari Cooper getting a little bit older. Brock Bowers is the tight end one. Jamie, I've been burned. I've been scorned by these first-round tight ends. Been scorned too many times. Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram. TJ Hawkinson pays off now, but it's been a long road to get here for TJ Hawkinson. Would I go back and spend that same first-round premium pick on him that I did years and years ago, when knowing I probably could have gotten cheaper multiple times over those years? Maybe not. It's just a long road to get there for the tight ends. It's a really dependent on the situation too. God forbid he go to Atlanta. I would go riot in the streets if that happened. But it's gonna be tough for me to put him there without seeing him. I'm still scorned a little bit. I know this was the year that finally rookie tight ends paid off, but we've seen Sam Laporta fall off these recent weeks. If you made it to the championship with Sam Laporta, it wasn't because of Sam Laporta. Dalton Kincaid falling a little bit off too. These guys have bright futures, don't get me wrong, but it's just the tight end position. I'd rather just not be a part. I'd rather buy low on my tight ends. I had David Njoku, your guy, in a lot of spots this year, because it seems like you can always kind of find a buy low guy. And when you do decide to buy high on a tight end, Travis Kelce this year lets people down a little bit. George Kittle, up and down. That's George Kittle's career as a roller coaster. And that seems to be like a lot of tight ends for me. TJ Hawkinson, now an ACL injury. It's always a mess, I feel like. Even when it's good, it's still pretty messy for the tight end position. It took Njoku to break out, so not giving up on tight ends like Pitts. Yeah, I mean, that's the deal, but it almost feels like there's always a buy low point for a tight end. And that's why, it was such a long road for David Njoku to get here. He was cut from a lot of deep dynasty rosters at some points. When he was playing behind some of the secondary tight ends you've had. Trying to think of that guy's name who's played for the Cleveland over the past couple of years. Maybe he's on my sheet here. Hunter Bryant. That was the name I was looking for. Hunter Bryant. He's played behind Hunter Bryant in the last couple of years at certain points. It always seems it's tough. So I'm probably not going to have Brock, unless I really don't fall in love with this class or any wide receivers or anything. I'm probably not going to have much Brock Bowers. I don't want to take him with the top 5 pick. And that's probably what it's going to take to get Brock Bowers. Yeah, that's exactly where I was getting him for third rounders, Jamie. That ended up paying off for David Njoku. All right, everybody, that's it. We wrapped it up. Near an hour. Thanks for joining me. I'm definitely going to be maybe just a season wrap up next week. And then I'm going to be diving into the rookies. It's going to be all just rookie fever from here till March. That'll be pretty much everything Harrison Bryant, not Hunter Bryant. Okay, thank you for correcting me, Jamie. I remember he was a sleeper on the radar for a while there, but I've since kind of fallen off a bit, so I haven't looked him up in a while. But But anyway, like I said, rookies here coming up. I know I mentioned I gave some overviewing that I'm not too excited about this class coming up, but especially if you're in a non-superflex league. But superflex leagues still get excited about the talent. Wide receiver is going to be fairly deep. So we're going to be covering all that starting probably in 2 weeks very heavily, and it won't stop until March. So looking forward to it, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and you all, good luck in your fantasy championships, wherever you might be playing. It's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully when you see me next week, I'm a lot richer than I am today, but if not, you might see a little bit of a sad face. So thanks a lot, everybody. Good luck.